Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the UGAsports.com Quick Take. This is your host, Jason Butt. And hey, who would have thought, going all the way back to the summer, that Stetson Bennett IV would be a Heisman Trophy finalist? I think the Burlsworth Trophy, he won that last night, and that was pretty awesome for the kid, coming in as a walk-on. And, that award goes to the player who the best player in the country who started their career as a walk-on. So, congratulations to Stetson for winning the Burlsworth Trophy. But Heisman, I mean, hey, look, I know I've said on here, it's kind of funny. I was there, I was out, I was there, I was out, and now I guess we're here once again. We're talking about this, but I know in the summer when I looked at Stetson Bennett's Heisman odds and one of the books that I use. It was plus 12,400, and I'm thinking, okay, Georgia has a chance to be the best player. He has a chance to be the starting or is the starting quarterback for a team that has the chance to be the best. Like, of course, he's going to have a shot at being in New York, and with those odds, it's quite remarkable. And then you saw him kind of go up and down in terms of Heisman favorability, and it's interesting because I don't think he's going to win. But I do want to say that after the Kentucky game, I thought he was out. He was not getting an invite to New York. That said, it seems like there were a lot of players who, through fault or not of their own. I mean, I think Blake Corum's a great example. He's not a finalist, but it was the injuries late in the year that kind of took him out of the running. You look at some of the other players around the country, and they just kind of fell off. Bryce Young. Not necessarily to his fault. His team's just not as good this year. He doesn't have the surrounding cast of receivers that Alabama has enjoyed in the past, which is ironic that Jermaine Burton's there. We'll talk about that in a second. But then C.J. Stroud, obviously he's there, back at it, but maybe not the favorite that you would think that you would have thought, at the beginning of the season. Hendon Hooker not invited to New York, and that's largely in part due to the injury that he sustained late in the year. And I think those circumstances kind of allowed for Stetson Bennett championship week to, his big performance against LSU helped elevate him back into the conversation. Now, you look at the odds, I would say Vegas is very much saying this is Caleb Williams' trophy. Minus 2,500 is ridiculous. And Caleb Williams, USC, put up a ton of numbers, ton of touchdowns. But, of course, that offense, I mean, look at what Lincoln Riley, I mean, that's the thing about the Heisman Trophy that does bother me a good bit is that, in today's day and age, so this award, I used to be a Heisman voter. For 3 years, I voted for the award when I covered Georgia as a beat writer for the Macon Telegraph. And the thing that bothers me most about the award is, well, it's mostly voted on by sports writers. There was a big component of it voted on by sports writers who are able to, get a vote. And I don't know if they necessarily pay as much attention to like the actual play on the field, and that it just becomes a numbers game. You just look at like the award. I mean, it's quarterbacks, running backs. You occasionally get a receiver. Devontae Smith won a couple years ago. Rarely does a receiver, win the award. And so it's really just a quarterback, running back kind of thing. And that's kind of where it's evolved to. I know the criteria. People have been sharing that a lot on social media lately. It's not necessarily the best player. But you would think it's the most prestigious, coveted award. Usually, it would go to the best player. That's really not what the award is. What the award is now. Caleb Williams, great season. I think it's just one of those things where you look overall, at the body of work, what the competition. I mean, are we really going to argue that USC had a tougher schedule than Georgia, for instance? Are we going to hold, Are we going to hold it against Stetson Bennett that he didn't have, say, 37 touchdowns that Caleb Williams had, and that Stetson had only 20 when, he also had 7 rushing, when you also get down to inside the 10-yard line, and Georgia typically runs the ball to try and get its red zone touchdowns. Are we going to hold it against Stetson Bennett that, he had that stretch where He went four? Was it 3 games in a row without a touchdown? When he still was able to rush for touchdowns in those games. And again, running backs, you could argue, vulturing him near the goal line. Whereas it doesn't seem that that's the case with Caleb Williams at South Carolina, just based on how they run their offense. But Stetson Bennett in his biggest games, I mean, it's hard to argue that when you put Stetson Bennett at his best this season, that he is somehow inferior than the other players that were invited to New York. I think there have obviously been some graphics that you all have seen. You guys follow Georgia quite close. There are plenty of graphics out there that kind of show the stats in the big games. And I mean, big game stat is it's true. It's a true moniker for the guy because LSU came up big, Tennessee came up big, Oregon came up big. He very much deserves to be in New York. I truly believe. I didn't think he would after Kentucky. I just figured most people would write him off, but I do think the circumstances helped him out. That said, I do think, knowing what I know about sports writers, and I don't mean this negatively, just knowing what I know about sports writers, knowing what I know about this award, it's a stat-driven award. I just can't help but think Caleb Williams will be the Heisman Trophy winner. Max Duggan, Stetson Bennett, CJ Stroud, they all had great seasons. And I think all 4 very much deserving to be there. And so really just, great year for all those guys. 3 of them are in the college football playoff. And then it's kind of funny that the one who's the presumed winner, or the one who's probably going to win it, ended up not making the playoff. And for the Heisman, I mean, you don't want to hold one game against them. And he was hurt as well. So you don't want to hold that against them. And Utah just typically does that, the Pac-12. They just love to ruin things for other teams in that conference. Who would have thought, though? I mean, it's to me the best story in my lifetime in college football. This kid Stetson Bennett, because and the craziest part is all the crap he took from a lot of people. Over the last year and a half going into this season. You talk about a kid. I can remember. I'm gonna throw out Jake Rowe, who's now at On3. Me and him when I was on the beat, we used to talk a lot, and I just remember we were actually, I think he was over at my place the day that Stetson Bennett committed as a walk-on to Georgia coming out of high school. And I just remember, seeing it getting retweeted and then kind of looking at him and being like, who is this kid? Like, why would you commit? Like, Jake Fromm was there. Was Jacob Eason still there going into his second season or something like that? I just remember kind of looking at him going, why is this kid committing to Georgia as a walk-on? Like, he's never going to play. He's like, well, that's ridiculous. And then we pulled up his tape and his huddle tape, and we were like, this kid's actually pretty good. He's moving around, like getting outside the pocket, throwing down. I mean, you're sitting there watching this little guy just airing the ball out down the field, and man, he's pretty good. But yeah, he'll never. I mean, he's too short. He'll never play. But man, they got a good practice quarterback, and I remember both of us being really impressed with what we saw, on that high school tape. And so then to see him go from the walk-on, the Baker Mayfield simulation, and for the Rose Bowl, and then leave to JUCO. Never thought he'd come back to Georgia. Then being surprised on that following signing day when he comes back to Georgia, given the quarterback issues, where he otherwise would have been at Lafayette had Georgia not reached out at the last second, thinking that he would never play. Backed up Jake Fromm. Then gets moved to fifth string. They bring in all the quarterbacks, and then ends up having to start because DeJuan Mathis couldn't get the job done against Arkansas. And then has the game against Alabama. And then everybody wants to pile on. And then he ends up being the backup. JT Daniels comes in. JT Daniels is the starter. Carson Beck jumps him. But then he ends up having to come back in and save the day when JT gets hurt. And then here you are. And then again, he has to go back and then become the starter again. And the next thing you know, he goes and wins a national championship, Orange Bowl MVP, national championship MVP, SEC championship MVP, and it's been the most unbelievable run. And now he's a Heisman finalist. I mean, that is I can't think of many more, or I can't think of a more remarkable story, at least in my lifetime, when it comes to college football. And that's something I think this Georgia fan base, everybody's going to remember. And even those who doubted him and those who didn't want him to start, whether it was in 2020 or 2021, I think a lot of those people, I mean, he finally won them over too. You would think, at least, with the kind of season he's put in. So, best of luck to him. Maybe enough writers, enough people out there after this past week voted for him, and maybe he'll shock the world, But it's definitely crazy to kind of see where this story started and where it is now. And so, with that in mind, thank you so much for tuning in today and taking the time to listen to me chat about Stetson Bennett and the Georgia football program. If you haven't, please subscribe, like, us here at the YouTube, UGAsports.com. Go to the UGAsports.com dog vent. Subscribe there as well. The best forum for UGA Sports on the World Wide Web. Thank you so much. You have been awesome, and I've been Jason Butt. Y'all take care.